Hi, my name is Dana Harris Seeger, and this is my Baltic handmade life. Hi, my name's Dana Harris Seeger. In this video, I am going to be dyeing some wool fiber in some natural dyes, specifically alder cones. So today I am going to be taking this wool fiber. It's called roving. It's basically been processed from the sheep, but it hasn't been spun into yarn or dyed. So what I want to do first is dye it to color it, and then eventually I will spin it into yarn using either this drop spindle or my supported spindle, and then from there it becomes a knitted object like these mittens. And in Latvia and Estonia, mittens are like a huge part of the culture, and so much so that a woman's dowry isn't money, it's actually mittens and socks or knitted things. So they're really, really important, and I'll definitely do a video on some knitted mittens and later on. But today I just want to color the yarn, or the roving rather, and the way that I want to do that is from some alder cones from our property. This is what the alder cones look like before they are turned into dye. This is a dried bunch of cones, and they just fall off, or you could pick them off the tree like in the wintertime, or I did it in this, midsummer or early summer. You can just find them on the ground. And the alder tree is kind of like a birch tree. It's a deciduous tree, but the bark and the cones have a lot of tannins, so you can use them for a really pretty dye. This is a bunch of alder cones that have been soaking. You could see the color of the water. This was just regular water a couple days ago. Has turned sort of a rusty color brown. And this is originally it was about 5 ounces of cones. And I'm going to try to use a pretty saturated dye, so like 5-to-1 weight ratio of plant material to fiber. And then the other thing I want to try is pre-mordanting some of the fibers in iron. So this is an iron solution. It's basically some rusty objects in water and vinegar, and I've left this for about a week, and so the water has been saturated with the iron, and I'm going to heat this up and pre-mordant or pre-soak some of these fibers in the iron and see if I can get a slightly different, maybe darker brown, and just see what range of colors I can get. So on the stove here, I've got some water heating, and I'm going to put the iron solution in that, let it sit there for warming up for about an hour, and then I'm going to put the fiber in and let that soak again on like a simmer for about an hour. And then I'm going to put it in this bath where I have right now some, ooh, look at that steam, some alder bark. I have some alder bark in there right now, and it's changing the color. It's been heating for about 3 hours. The bark, like I mentioned, and the cones have the tannin, so they produce the dye. So I'm going to pour some of that water from the cones in and mix it up and see how that works. So I took the steaming pot of bark off the heat for a little bit, so the camera doesn't fog up. You can see kind of that pretty color. Yeah, there it goes. So this is just the bark, the bark dye, and I've got this pre-mordanted yarn that I got the yarn from Knit Picks, but I mordanted it in alum, which is just pre-soaking it in basically a binder so that the pigment will stick a little bit more readily. So I want to see what that will do with just the bark before I add the cones. And it's usually a good idea to pre-soak your fiber, pre-wet it, if you didn't just remove it from the alum bath. So I'm going to wet it a little bit so it kind of soaks up the dye more evenly. But then I want to see what it looks like just by dipping it. All right, so here's my pre-wetted fiber. And I'm just sort of dipping it in the dye. This bamboo stick that I can use to kind of swirl it around. So it's getting a little bit of color. We'll let it kind of sit in there for a little while. So this has not undergone the iron bath, just an alum pre-soak. And the color's not quite going to be as saturated either, I don't think, because I don't have the cones in as well. It's just the bark, but I just kind of wanted to see what would happen. So we're outside here letting the iron water warm up. We put in just the water from the iron bath and a little bit more water so that the fibers could kind of swirl around. And my pot's just sitting on a little burner outside where you know, any steam can kind of get vented out. All right, our iron mordant is ready. So I've got a couple different fibers. This is a Romney roving that is that's been pre-mordanted in alum as well. So I'm going to put that in first. And then I've got a Romney that has not been pre-mordanted. So I'm just going to try that and see what that does. And I'm using this stick to kind of get my fiber in there. Let that sit in there for a little bit. And then when it's time to take the fiber out of the iron mordant, I just have a bucket of rinse water right here ready to go. So I lift out the fiber without doing too much, trying not to move it around too much. And then I just let it drip. Then put it in the rinse water, which is warm, because wool doesn't like to change temperatures. So I keep the rinse water at the same temperature as or you can let it cool once it comes out of the mordant bath. Then I'll rinse it without moving it around. Then it's ready to go into the dye pot. All right, now that my bark water and alder cones have been cooking for a couple hours, just at a low boil, I'm going to strain out the plant material, capture try to capture all the water while keeping out the plant matter, so it doesn't get tangled in all my fibers. nice. Okay, a little bit more. Good stuff. So there's all the plant stuff. And I could probably scoop out the rest and put my water, dye water back in the pot and put it back on the stove and then put my fibers in. Alright, so there's the dye. Looks amazing. It's really rich brown, reddish brown. So now I'm going to put in the pre-mordanted iron fiber and see what that does. And then I've also got some fibers that aren't pre-mordanted, that are just raw, and then some that are pre-mordanted just in alum. So we'll see the different colors that makes. So this has been in the iron bath for about a half an hour, but it's also had some alum on it. And I'm just going to set it in there and let it kind of sit in there. It's off the heat, but it's still pretty warm. And I'm going to turn it on to low so that the fibers can kind of cook. On the heat. So these are all the ones with iron. And then this one did not have an alum mordant. This is just iron. So we'll see what that looks like too. So this is kind of the boring part. They're going to sit in the steamy heat of the dye bath for anywhere from half an hour to a couple hours. And I'm doing a few different samples just so that I can see what each type looks like. So I'll spare you the waiting and cut right to pulling it up. Alright, so now these guys have been kind of simmering in the dye pot for about an hour. This one I kind of dipped in. We'll see what that guy kind of looks like. That's kind of cool. But I want to take out the roving first. Come on, little buddy. Alright. So this one had the iron pre-mordant. Let it drip in there, and then I'll let it cool in this pan before I rinse it, since it's been kind of boiling. Oh yeah, there it is. It's hiding. Okay, and then when these cool, I'm going to rinse them. Just gently submerge them in plain water so that some of that dye can come off. But again, I don't want it to felt up, so I'm not going to immediately put it in a different temperature bath. These are some of the already spun yarns that I'm dyeing in the alder bath. Okay, so it's time to take this guy out. And when I'm ready, so it's dripping in the pot, and I've got a bucket right here of hot water for rinsing. And when it's done dripping, I'll just put it in the pot, bucket, I guess. Put it in the bucket, and then I'll squeeze the water, squeeze the yarn gently in the water, and then replenish the rinse water until it runs clear. Rinse it out. It's pretty dark from the dye that was in there. And I'm trying to keep the temperature the same. So it came out of a pretty warm, pot. So I'm not trying to move it around. I'm just trying to kind of squeeze out the all the water. So the process is the same of rinsing for the yarn as it is with the roving. And that's done. And lift it out and gently squeeze. Again, I don't want to felt it. When it dries, you can pick out all the little bits and then untangle it and just hang it to dry. So there's the sort of ombre color. All right, so these are some of the results from the alder dye. They're really kind of a rich brown, and when they're just with the roving, they kind of remind me of toupee, right? So, you know, it's a great way to match some natural hair color. But in any case, the dye came out really nice. These were all pre-mordanted in iron. And then I've got some still rinsing that were not pre-mordanted, or just pre-mordanted in alum, and I'll sort of pan the results and show you all that. But overall, I'm pretty pleased with how rich the color is, and I was expecting a brown, but you know, it's nice to see that it actually worked. So alder cones, yay! A great resource for natural dyes. All right, thanks for watching, and I hope you enjoyed seeing the dyeing process with natural dyes using alder cones and bark.